So it turns out yesterday was the 2-month anniversary since Dad passed away, and Thursday, no, would it have been Thursday? No, actually, so it would have been Saturday was the 2-month anniversary from Dad passing, and then last Thursday would have been 2 months from Mum. Wow, it's crazy to think about that. And it's interesting. There's been a few things that have happened in this past week that have kind of changed, just changed like I mentioned in previous videos. I think this is just a constantly evolving thing, and as different things happen, um, there are different feelings that are associated with that. One of the things Sky mentioned, so we went out, we met up with Rob and Gemma, who's my uncle, my aunt and my mum's brother. And one of the things Sky mentioned after we met them, which I very much felt as well, was it was kind of weird. It was almost like this kind of bittersweet um, feeling, because it was, it was lovely seeing them, but at the same time, it was kind of tinged with sadness as well, because normally when we see them, Mum's there as well, So it was this kind of strange feeling. It's kind of like, oh, there's somebody who's not here. And I think normally, like sometimes people are absent from occasions, not everyone can always make it. But I think, when you're reminded of that thing, then it kind of leaves this pit in your stomach almost. And I think it was even more pronounced reminder because my cousin Leo, who has Down syndrome, and actually, I think for anyone, especially when you're younger, it is harder to process these things anyway. But I think particularly for Leo's how old now? 18 or 19, maybe even older. I can't remember. But anyway, I think he's been kind of struggling to grasp the idea that Mum is no longer here. I might have mentioned the relationship Mum and Leo had in a previous video, but they've always had this very um, beyond beyond boundaries relationship. Like it kind of transcends this physical realm. They've always just had this very special connection. Like there's so many pictures of them I've got in my picture frame behind me. Actually, there's one of like Mum and Leo, and I remember Leo came once when Mum was ill and she was staying with me and she was in bed, and I've got this picture of them. And Leo, he just like puts his hands on Mum's head and he's like, and sick, and he's like kind of transferring this healing energy, and they've just had this connection, this always been there. And I'm sure and this is what I mean. I don't think that has gone. Like, I think whatever they had, it transcends um, this physical plane. And so I think Rob had kind of explained to Leo, Rob and Gemma, kind of trying to explaining, like, Aunt Mum, that she's in heaven now, Um, so, he kind of said like, hey, where's Anne? And he kind of points up. So I think he kind of understands that, but at the same time, because I had Mum's phone and he'd be calling her like every night, for ages. Like he just kept calling. And it stopped eventually. I think he still kind of tries occasionally, like when I turn Mum's phone back on, there's like missed calls from him. So it's kind of like, I think he's still wanting, like, he's like, well, yeah, she's in heaven, okay, cool, but let me call her, kind of thing. Like, it's difficult, I think, for him to grasp that. But then part of me thinks, well, maybe, it wouldn't surprise me if he can talk to her. I think and this is something actually, was it Ben or Sky that mentioned this? There's these this podcast, I think it's called like the telepathy tapes or something, which is about either kind of kind of Asperger's or Down syndrome, or any of those kind of conditions, really neurodivergent conditions. And I think that, you know, they have people that are severely um neurodivergent or have certain neurological conditions very often um show these extremely heightened abilities in other areas. And I really think feel like from Leo, there's some amazing um ability he has, you know, that does kind of just transcend you know, what most people are able to do, how most people are able to communicate. You know, sees this energetic world and the different layers of reality. Like I don't know how, but yeah, there was something there. But anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. But all that to say, yeah, like it was great. It was nice to see them, but it was also kind of sad in some ways as well, you know. And even today, and you know, this is the kind of thing that comes up occasionally where, you know, there are different things that I would talk to both mum and dad about. You know, there are some things where it's like, oh yeah, I want to tell dad about this, or other things where I'm like, yeah, this is like I want to call, my instinct is to like call mum and tell her, and it's like someone to share in that excitement, you know. I think so often we will like go to call people, or we want to share this news in different areas with different people in our lives, you know. And when those things come up, it's still this really sad thing. And then it just, after that feeling, that realization kind of settles down and sinks in, there is this feeling of you know, like hollowness. It's like I was kind of reflecting on this earlier. It's kind of like a carved out watermelon almost, you know. Um, and then you know, I was looking outside. I was journaling this morning and kind of had this feeling, and I was looking outside, and I was like, you know, the sun still rises and still sets every day, and trains go by, and the birds sing, and everything just happens as usual. That these people aren't here anymore. Yeah, I feel like I say this every time, but it is a strange, it's a very surreal thing, you know, to think that. But then at the same time, you know, it's not like I actually I was watching a video earlier with Stephen Bartlett and Alex Hormozy, and Alex Hormozy talked about losing his mum, and he was saying in there about how people often measure how much you love someone by the amount of suffering that you seem to go through. And I think that's true. You know, it shouldn't be that way. It's kind of like, oh, if you know, this person's depressed and crying constantly and they can't get out of bed. Wow, you must really love that person. It's like, no, it's the extent to which you show sadness is not a measure of your love for somebody. Um, and I especially feel that for me, like I love my mum so deeply. I love my dad so deeply, and that doesn't like I'm day to day. I'm not like I'm just being real here. I'm being honest. I'm not thinking about them. I have these moments where, like I said, there are moments throughout the day and situations that happen, and occasions that happen, and wins, and I'm like, oh yeah, let me call mum, and then there's that sadness, you know. Um, but day to day, I'm not. They're not on my mind at all. And does that mean I love them any less? Hell no. Um, and I think it's a kind of, you know, it's one of the almost like sickening things about our society and the world we live in is so much is, or people's perception is kind of like, oh, this equals that. Everything's black and white, you know. Um, it's yeah, it's a strange thing. And but to be fair, like saying that, and you know, I I wouldn't have known because I've never been through something like this before, so I wouldn't have known what to expect. And I think I mentioned in previous videos, you know, my the vision, the idea I had for grief in my mind was like was depression and crying and being in the state of being inconsolable is what I had defined real grief as being. Um, and sometimes there is this, you know, it was only when I saw that Hormozy clip and I was like, okay, no, I actually really strongly resonate with that. But sometimes you do, I do, and have felt like, does this mean I don't care? Am I being really cold-hearted because I'm not really feeling this that much? And you know, what does that actually mean? Um, and like I said, it's not that, you know, I can choose, I can choose to sit and think about all of the things that make me feel sad, because there are many things that make me feel sad, you know, about the situation, all the things that, you know, I won't get to share with mum, all the things that she won't get to do, about the way she died and the life she had and the things she never got to do. I can think about all these things and I will and can just cry. But you know, one of the things Alex Hormozy said at the end of this clip was, you know, people will judge how much you love someone by the extent to which you suffer. But the last thing that person who loved you would have wanted is for you to be suffering, right? So you are kind of left with this choice of like, you know, if, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, but if I feel like I need to feel sad, I'm going to take some time and I'm just going to reflect on those things that make me feel sad, and then just honor that part of me that wants to feel into that and wants to explore that more. But then, you know, there are other parts where maybe I don't, you know, it just doesn't make sense. Like I'm just going to get on with my day. And I've actually been, you know, it's funny. I think when this first happened and when I went back to work afterwards, there was this feeling of, you know, are you just working to um you know, to what's the word, distract yourself, you know, to have a distraction so that you don't have to feel. And I think maybe to begin with there was a part of that, you know. I think I said this in one of the early videos about how, you know, when somebody dies, there's so much to deal with, so much administration and funeral and all of that. And there's just a lot, you know, there's just so much going on. So you are distracted. And it's almost like it's almost like a second death that happens after the funeral when everything else is done, where it's kind of like you're just alone with this knowing that that person's no longer there, you know. And it's like it almost feels like the day they died again after everything, you know, the whole song and dance of all the administration and dealing with all of this crap and then the funerals and all of that, and then it all settles down. Um, so it's that kind of feeling again. So going back to work after that, yeah, maybe there is a part of that where it's like I just want to be busy again. But now I can feel when there are kind of like intrinsic and extrinsic drivers. You know, intrinsic drivers being like this is coming from, it's almost like a channel, like an energy that I have, versus extrinsic in my mind is it's more being like I like there is like something, some external force where I'm like, I want to do this so I don't distract. I want to keep busy. I need to keep busy. Like it's like an external driving force. Um, Whereas an intrinsic, it's like a, you know, there is just like I'm just acting through this like this channel within me. I just have this like calling. Um, and recently I've just really been feeling that, you know, and I think I mentioned in one of the previous videos as well about how I feel like maybe, you know, part of this is, you know, my parents' energy acting through me. And there's just, I just feel very inspired and very in this like creative flow at the moment. Um, I really do. And I think, you know, part of that as well is probably just having there's a lot of things at play here, and I think I've mentioned this in previous videos as well, but about how, I think there was just this attachment, of yeah, kind of like attachments to, mum that I had, and this feeling of responsibility and having to look after her and be there for her as a kind of single mum, and she didn't have anyone, and that feels like that responsibility fell on me. So, that was always in the back of my mind. And now being free of that, it opens up this space and all of these possibilities. And I think, and also as well as it is just, it's kind of, I was talking about this with Ben the other day, actually. It's really interesting how there is we did a podcast episode on this, on the This Could Be Something Interesting podcast, about exchange. It was actually our first episode. And exchange comes in lots of different forms. It might mean like an exchange between two people. It might be a verbal exchange. It might be a physical exchange of, money and and a product that you're buying, like buying a coffee is a form of exchange, between two parties. But another form of exchange is like this bigger, um, universal exchange, in terms of like, you probably heard the saying of like, you have to make room for new things, mentally, physically, spiritually. And it's really funny how, you know, Ben and I, so we got some inheritance money through recently, and the timing of it when it happened, it was like we went and we cleared the rest of mum's stuff. She had a load of stuff in storage. So we kind of set a date of doing that on Friday. Um, and the moment we had cleared it all out and we closed down the storage account, we'd taken everything to the dump, and we managed to give some of the stuff away to people as well. And the moment we closed everything, the money came in. And it's just, it was such a apt example of, you have to clear out, and it's not always physical. Sometimes it's just like making mental space, but you can't, if your vessel is already full, there's no room for new things to exist within that. That can happen in the form of, relationships that you need to let go of. You might have a new relationship that you want to form, in whether it be friendship, romantic, or otherwise, but you have to let go of another relationship in order for new ones to blossom, or whatever. There's so many different forms of this, but that is exchange. And I think it's so fascinating, it's so interesting, like how that works. And I just think that was just such a perfect example of that, really. um yeah, even that kind of whole process, actually, of clearing out some of mum's stuff. I was talking with someone about this the other day, in that like, I'm not particularly sentimental person with most things. Like, I don't like hold on to things too much. Um and she said to me, and she kind of said, well, like, why? Like, there must have been some things at like some points in your life that you've held on to things. And when I thought about it, I thought, actually, that's true. Like, there are things where I've had a real emotional attachment to them, and maybe the reason I don't hold on to things now, and I live very light. If I get too much things, I will just throw things away, give them to charity, whatever. I'll just get rid of things. Um, and I, like, really, like, to the point, like, if I can't, like, I will just give something to someone, even if it's worth loads of money. I will just give it to someone for free, if it means that I don't have to think about it anymore. Like, that's how much it, like, I don't want the mental, because it does, like, things, material items, even if they're out of sight, out of mind, even if you've got them hidden away in storage or under the bed or whatever, it occupies mental space. The physical things we have occupy mental space. Again, it's a form of energetic exchange. And she challenged me on it and kind of said, well, is the reason you do it, is the reason you are like that now because you are kind of scared of having that emotional attachment? like you did in the past. And I hadn't really considered that. And maybe it is. Maybe it is. I've always convinced myself that it is because, which I also think is valid. It is a valid argument that, and I think I heard, can't remember who it was. It was like some Buddhist monk in some podcast or video or something, kind of explaining this concept of like the things we own us. The more things we have, the more mental bandwidth it takes. Even if we don't think it, even if it's not consciously in our mind, it is in our mind somewhere. Um, and that has always been my rationale. But there probably is a part of it where it's like, I'm just scared of that, attachment. And yeah, it's funny. So I didn't really kind of have that same feeling, but it was this, it's this weird, me and Ben were kind of joking about it, of like, it's almost like this kind of this like sick joke of like, someone dies and then you're just left with all this mess, all this crap. Like, just like, it's the last thing you want to be dealing with, is just like stuff. Like, it's just painful to think about, and I don't know, so, like, yeah, when I see things, I'm just like, this is just all like, just throw it all away. Again, maybe there is something there where it's like, I don't want to, maybe it's like I'm trying to avoid the emotions of that, but it's just like, it's all just stuff. And I actually have a similar feeling and, I guess, relationship with, how at funerals, well, maybe you don't, some people will know at funerals when, people will very often, it's like I think it's like just a tradition, really. People will say their goodbyes and they will touch the coffin. They will lie on the coffin, kiss it, whatever, like whatever that way is of saying goodbye. I've never understood that, because to me it's kind of like, it's just a dead body. Like, what am I saying goodbye to? I've already said my good. Like, the person's no longer in their body. Like, it's a wooden box with an empty vessel in it. And it's a similar thing for me, I think, where it's just like, these are just empty things. Like, there's nothing in those things. Um I think there are, I mean, saying that now, even though I'm saying all of this, I think there are a few things where, like, there are some things I have chosen to keep, like, some of mum's jewelry, where I think it just feels like it is imbued with an energy of that person. But, other things like sofas or bookshelves or books or whatever, it's kind of like, it's just like this inanimate object. Again, if it's something like somebody's worn, or a piece of jewelry or something that person always had, I understand that. I get that, like a signature thing that somebody always had and they always wore. It's difficult for that not to become sentimental. But I guess the main thing is like, it's all just the stuff in terms of furniture and just little doodads, little ornaments and stuff that just sit around the house, and it's kind of like, oh God, like, what do I even do with all of this? Um, so yeah, that was that was good fun. Um, but yeah, so that happened over the weekend, and I think that's about it, really. I think in August I'm going to, I've said to Lisa that I'll go and house sit for them. I think she's gonna go away with the kids, my half brother Hannah and Oliver as well. So I'm gonna look after the house, and yeah, it'll probably be weird not having, not having dad there, but I think it will be interesting because obviously there'll be pictures of, dad up around the house and stuff. So, and just being in his home, um, that'll probably that'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting thing. I think I've spoken about this before in terms of, it's not, um it doesn't feel as hard, maybe because I'm, this is my own place. Like if I was in my childhood home still, that would be very different, right? Because there's a lot of memories in there. But it's not. And yes, mum did live with me. She, because I had to move her in with me when she got ill. So she was here for about 3, 4 months, but it wasn't long enough for, you know, that kind of emotion, there to be that kind of emotional connection still with her. There's a little bit of that when I go into the spare room. I think I mentioned this previously, but not in any kind of strong way. Like I can sit in the living room and it doesn't kind of feel like, oh yeah, this is where I used to do that thing with mum. But I think when you go to someone's like home, like the parents' home, um, it's different, because the rooms, you're used to being in those rooms more with the people than not with them, if that makes sense. So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic and thing to experience. Actually, even now, like it actually kind of makes me quite sad to like think, I can feel like, the emotions kind of coming up. Um, is quite sad to think about, just like sitting in my dad's living room and him not being there. Just small things, that you see, like, and I think I mentioned this in the last video as well. Like I think about, for Lisa, um, just the clothes, his shoes, like just, again, like with mum, like just all this stuff, that being just in your face constantly, like surrounded by those things, and you know my inclination would be throw it all away, like get rid of all of it. Um, but then again, when you're living with someone, it's kind of like, well, this it's not like that wasn't necessarily his thing; it was our thing, um, and that makes it even harder. So I can't even imagine that. That's really hard. It must be so hard. I just I can't even think how difficult that must be. But yeah, so that's going to be an interesting one for sure. Then. But that's pretty much all I've got to share today, I think. Just trying to think if there was anything else that's kind of happened recently, but I don't think there is. So that's going to be it for today. But I'll see you guys all in the next video, probably next week.